Hello everybody, welcome to Harmon Garage. This is Pops. How's everybody doing? Hope you're having a wonderful day. Well, Aaron and I are back at it. We're on my grandson's swamp thing. Been doing a little bit of work on it and we have to get it done. He's been bugging us to get it done, and so we decided we better hurry up and get it done. So right now we're working on tranny cooler lines. Found out the old ones were all rotted and
they just weren't right.
So
for the transmission or the radiator.
So when you put a 97 radiator in an 85 truck that's got the 85 transmission in it, things don't match out too well. So we're harmonizing it and make it work.
The lines on the 97 radiator are 3/8 lines, and the lines on the 85 transmission, 84 transmission that we pulled out of Sparky are 5/16. So obviously that doesn't really mesh that well. But what we did, what I'm doing, I got new fittings. They're already on the transmission, but I got new fittings for the transmission side that instead of going from 3/8 in the transmission to 5/16, they go from 3/8 in the transmission to 3/8 line. So we're just increasing the line size of the tranny cooler lines, which in turn will allow it to hold a little bit more fluid in the cooling system of the transmission, which should help with the longevity of the transmission also. Maybe not, maybe so. Where it stops, I don't know. But anyways, we're making tranny cooler lines. I had this piece that I got right now, I had pieces from that parts truck that were about this long for both lines. And then somebody had spliced in rubber and I had to switch over everything on the other end anyways. So went and bought some 3/8 brake line, made it extend to as long as we needed it, bent it, flared it, all that good stuff. Now I'm flaring this line that's gonna go, it starts at the radiator and goes back, and then we have unions over there where I can slap it together. And we're doing the same for the top and the bottom. I gotta go over and take this, put this in the vise to flare it because I'm not strong enough to hold it and do it on this bigger line. So headed over there. All right, so I got the end of this flared. We got our union put on there. And then this is my new piece that I made for underneath. Goes on the transmission like so. I flared this end. It's gonna go on here and union together right there. But I'm gonna do that underneath the truck because it's easier to feed this fairly straight part through than it is to feed it through with this crooked part on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this in. We'll pull the other line out. I already got it marked also, and we'll cut it off and flare it and everything, and then we'll be able to put our lines in. All right, a little bit of progress has been made since I last updated you guys. Pops actually ended up leaving this morning, and I didn't work most of the day yesterday because my wife had to take one of the kids to the doctor, and I had to stay home and watch another one. So I didn't get a whole crap load done the last 2 days because I was just kind of, me and Pops were tinkering, but we were just kind of hanging out, spending some time together, and I was kind of doing some stuff that's not really that easy to film and extremely time consuming. So when we left off, we were talking about tranny cooler lines. I got those all done. That's the factory lines off of the parts truck 97. Then, as I said I was gonna do, I came down here, I flared them, put unions in them, and then I made my own lines out of brake line. That's the same size, 3/8 brake line. Goes up to the transmission. Put new fittings in the transmission to accept the 3/8 lines. Bent our lines, flared them, ran them into the unions. And now we have 3/8 tranny cooler lines instead of 1/4 inch. So a little bit more fluid. Maybe it'll last a little longer. Probably not, doesn't matter. But anyways, they're done. And then obviously got the battery in. It's not sitting where it's supposed to be or mounted. It's just kind of sitting there. We got new battery cables. And then I decided that I was gonna start messing with the lights, because you know, you gotta have lights working. So I went through all the lights on the truck and got every light on this thing working. We got fender markers, we've got our headlights, we've got our parking lights. I gotta tighten that up or something. It's all working. Working. I'm going to show you guys the hazards, but as far as the turn signals and backup lights go, you're just going to have to take my word for it, and the brake lights that they work, because they do, but it's a lot more to check, and I don't have anybody here to help me push brake pedals and stuff. So all the lights are working. When none of them were working when we started. So we had to fix some wiring, we had to fix some sockets, I had to rewire these headlights, because these are those custom co-light lights that came out of Sparky. And then I had to pull the grill back out to fix the parking lights. And while we had it out, it was easier to mount the electric fans, or fan, because I could get to the back side. So we got a 16-inch electric fan. I went ahead and put our trigger signal down there in the head, which, being down in the head instead of being up on the thermostat, it's probably going to run more, because it's going to stay hotter down there than it would being up in the intake. But I don't have any ports up in the intake to put it in, so I'd rather have the fan on than not on. So should be good to keep this thing cool. I had a little bit of a, I don't know how to explain it, we'll call it a hiccup with front brake calipers, and was finally able to get one of the right ones. Got that on, got pads in it, replaced our hose. We got our hose replaced on this side. I should have a caliper for this side this afternoon. We should have all the brake parts that we need to do the back, including a new hose, and so on and so forth. We're pushing along, trying to get this thing done. I still got a little bit of wiring to clean up, but for the most part I cleaned up wiring, got rid of everything that we didn't need, and cleaned up what we do. Next step in the process is the fuel system. This tank that's in here, that's been in here the whole time this truck sat in the swamp, has a leak, and that black tarry substance is what's coming out of that leak. So no bueno. No bueno with leak, no bueno with tar. Yeah. So we have this tank that, if you go back in the channel, there's a truck named Oxen, and Oxen got a Holly Sniper, and after I got done working on it, the owner put a Holly tank with the built-in pump and everything in it on that truck. Had this tank left over. And I know this tank is good because I worked on that truck and we ran that truck off this tank. So I know this tank's clean, I know it's good, I know the sending unit's good, all that. I can literally drop the other tank out, put this tank in, hook up my line, hook up my filler, and we'll be good to go. So that's the next step. That's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna get underneath and drop the tank out. And once I get the tank out, I'll bring you guys back and we'll go through the transferring tank process. And then I have to run a fuel system. It's not just gonna be a regular stock fuel system. We gotta do some custom stuff there too. So I'll bring you guys back and we'll show you what we got going on. Alright, we got this out. Obviously I need to take the straps off, in the hangers, and put them on the other tank. And yeah, that's about it. That's the only thing we need to transfer over. And the filler tubes, no big deal. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this sending unit out, because this tank weighs like 300 pounds and it had tar coming out of it. So I'm just kind of curious to see what's down in here. So I'm gonna open it up, and if it's anything other than gas, I'll show you. But otherwise, we'll get to taking these straps off and transferring everything over to the other tank so we can get our tank back in. All right, well, I'm just gonna go out on a branch and say that if I would have just hooked fuel up to this tank, probably would have caused us a lot of problems and she never would have ran. So I got this sending unit out. Judging by the amount of crap stuck to it, growing on it, whatever you want to call it, tar buildup on the sock, and we got some dark mahogany stain. Anybody need some dark mahogany stain for their furniture or anything? If so, I've got about, I don't know, probably 8 to 9 gallons of it, and I'll sell it to you really cheap. It's got kind of a funky smell to it, but makes wood look great. So let me know if you're interested in some Harmon Garage dark mahogany stain. If not, we'll figure out a way to get rid of it. But for right now, I need to switch stuff over to the other tank. I went ahead and shot some PB Blaster on our straps here because they were all dirt and corroded and rusted, and they usually have a tendency to not like to come off. So I sprayed them with PB Blaster. I'm kind of letting them sit for a minute. Then I'm gonna come over with a wire brush on my drill. Man, I cannot talk today. I'm gonna come over with a wire brush on my drill, clean the threads off, spray a little bit more PB Blast on them, and then for sure get them started. If not, take them all the way off by hand, because I personally have snapped off way too many of those to count, and I don't have any other straps right now, and I don't want to have to go and get any. So take it easy, do it, you know, the manual way, and you kind of got a feel for it, where if you just take an impact and put it on there and shock it, there's a good chance it's gonna break off. So we'll let those sit and soak for a little bit. We'll hit them with the wire wheel, soak them some more. We'll see if we can't get them off of there. All right, so Some of you probably already know this. Some of you may not know. And this might help you out a little bit. But passenger side and driver side tanks can be ambidextrous. You can use either tank on either side. Now, the difference is the sending units, because they are different so that the fuel hoses point in towards the frame on either side. Now, that being said, you may notice this one's pointing out this way and that one's pointing out that way, telling you that this was a passenger side tank and this was a driver side tank. Well, to the best of my knowledge, that tank was on the driver's side of oxen, but the sending unit's wrong. So, not saying that it's wrong, not saying that it's not wrong, but I'm still going to put this tank in on the driver's side, and I usually put like a loop in my hoses on top of the tank. That way when you go to drop the tank down, it's got room that you can get the tank down to where you can unhook the hoses from the sending unit, and you're not always having to cut them and replace them every time or whatever. Not that you need to pull your tank down that often, but just in general. So that being said, that sending unit pointing out, that sending unit looking fairly new, and I know that it worked on the gauge and everything in the other truck, I'm going to leave it be, and we're just going to run a loop in the hose to come back over to the hard line of the frame, because why not? It's not going to hurt anything. So that being said, I told you guys I soaked these down in PB Blaster penetrating oil good. I'm going to go back with the wire brush on the drill and try to clean the threads up real good. Then we'll spray them with some more PB Blaster, and then we'll try to take them off by hand. Cleaned up. I got a ratchet wrench. A lot of times these are sticking out too far and a deep well socket won't go on them. It looks like it would on both of these, but I already grabbed the wrench and it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and give these a little squirting again. Then everybody's their own person and everybody does their own thing. But I've put impacts on these multiple times before and had them snap off. And that's the wrong size anyways, but for some reason my ratchet wrench, no ratchety. So, let me go get the right size. Alright, now we got the right size. Anyways, had them break off. They always break off flush at the edge of the nut, which means you have absolutely no stud left, so you can't go back on with them. And then these straps usually aren't an item that you can just go to your local parts store and they'll have it in stock. You usually have to order them online somewhere, go find another truck, and then you got to drop the gas tank out of it to get them out, and so on and so forth. And it's good for my muscles to do it by hand anyways. That's my workout routine, and I don't have any problems. So how I do it, that's why I do it, how I do it. And everybody's got their own way. So. Like this one. This one is not really wanting to go, even after I cleaned it up and lubed it and everything else. If I'd have put an impact on that, I probably would have either twisted the strap really bad or broke it off. Tighten it a little further than where it was, and see if we can get it cleaned up a little and get it to come off. Nope. Alright, well, I'm going to get back to the wire brush, clean on it some more, best that I can or whatever, and get it off. I'm not going to make you guys sit here and watch me repeat the same process over and over again. So I'll get this cleaned up and off one way or another, and then I'll bring you back and we'll do the other things we need to do to prep this tank. Then we'll get our stuff back in there. Alright, tank straps are back on. Got our filler neck back mounted. The only thing I got left to do is put a ground on here so we can ground it to the frame. We'll hook up our signal wire for our gauge. Then I need to block off and make sure we got a vented cap, and then I'll block off these two, the return and the vent for the tank, because we're not using the charcoal canister purge valve venting system at all. And we want to make sure mud daubers and whatnot don't get down in there. So we're going to block those off. Then we need to hook a line up to there. I'll bring you guys up underneath the truck and show you what we're doing as far as hooking up lines and what I'm going to do before we hook up the lines. And then we'll get the tank put back in the truck. Okay, some of you may remember if you've been following along with the build, and some of you may be new and just catching on, but this truck did not have a motor in it when we found it, when we got it, whatever you want to consider it. So this is how it's been sitting here with the fuel line not hooked to anything. Well, you might be able to tell mud daubers in the end of that hose. And we just don't, I'm not just gonna hook it up, is what I'm getting at. So, if you guys wanna come on a little tour down here with me. Here we have our signal wire for our gauge. And here we have our hard lines that run from here over to the other side of the frame rail, which I'll show you in a second. And then there's a small chunk of rubber. Then they turn back into metal and run all the way to that line up front that I showed you. Well, as you can see, mud daubers again. And then that comes over here and turns into this hose right here, which we'll take that hose off and replace it, but mud daubers. And then they had new lines run. And then here's our other metal line right here that I already showed you up front. So this needs to be connected back to here with a new line. But before that, I'm gonna take brake parts cleaner and spray as much of it as I can get into the line right here. And then I'm gonna bring compressed air behind it and force it through. We're gonna try to get this hard line as clean as we can. And then we're going to go over yonder where I showed you over here. And we're gonna get on that line and we're gonna spray brake parts cleaner in it and try to blow it out the front and get as much as we can from up there. So you guys get the picture. You understand what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm gonna film that, so I'm gonna get it cleaned up and we'll keep moving forward. All right, well, years ago when I was younger, I thought, me big strong guy, me put in gas tank. And I'd lay underneath there with half a tank of gas and bench press them up in there and hold them with one hand while I started the bolts. And I'm like, yeah, this is... Some people get smarter when they get older. Now I'm thinking, me big strong guy, stupid. So, yeah, we're gonna put a jack underneath it and let it do the work for us. I already got most of everything that I need hooked up. So I'm gonna get it started up in there, and I still gotta go underneath and get our ground put through where it needs to be, and make sure everything else is copacetic. And then with it balancing on the jack, I should be able to kind of get it up and get one bolt started where I need it to, and then we'll be able to kind of, you know, do all the things and the whoo and hey and get it in where it needs to be. If you can get your fuel neck hooked in the fuel neck hole, good thing to do, it helps. Try to see how things are looking here. There we go. Got one bolt started. We can get one started up here in the front. Alright. Somehow or another, somebody decided to put the wiring for the rear, and then there we go. That's what I needed. That is exactly what I needed. We were on top of the wiring and we needed to be underneath of it. So now, alright, now I've got a couple bolts started in the tank. I can go ahead and get the rest in and get them tightened down, and we'll keep moving on with the fuel system. So, be back with you guys in a little bit. Okay, we got the fuel tank fully reinstalled. We got our filler neck all put back in. We got our cap on, and we have all our fuel lines from the tank all the way up to the end of the hard line on the frame rail here. Thoroughly cleaned out, and they're thoroughly cleaned out, and they're all properly mounted. So next thing we got to do, I've got this clickety-clack pump here that we're going to install, and along with the clickety-clack pump I have a factory fuel pump relay out of OBS truck. So since I'm gonna be up here and wiring while we plumb in this fuel system, I also have this electric fan here that I've already showed you, and we already showed you the sensor down here in the block. So that comes with a controller that needs to be wired in also. So while I'm mounting relays and everything else, it's all in this bag right here. I'm gonna go ahead and do the fuel pump and the electric fan. So that'll be one more thing that we just get all done. And in between my little filming here, I went ahead and threw the rear shocks on both sides. This truck didn't have shocks at all when we got it. Obviously it didn't have a rear end, but it didn't have shocks either. And so we got new shocks for it, and I was looking for something to waste 30 minutes before I went home the other day, so I went ahead and threw those on. So I'm gonna get my tools out, I'm gonna get set up. We're going to mount these relays and kind of draw up a little schematic for them. And then we'll get ready to hook all this stuff up. All right, I got my fuel pump down here, and it's pretty much where it's gonna go. So I'm going to just trying to kind of figure out exactly where I want it. So we'll put it right about there. I'm just going to come in here. Give it a little mark. Then I'm going to grab a drill bit, you know, the stuff you need to make holes, and we'll make holes. Now you'd think, when I was getting ready to do all this and setting everything up, I would have grabbed the drill and the drill bits before I turned the camera on to start doing this, but I didn't. did, however, get bolts, but bolts ain't no good if you ain't got nothing to put holes in it, right? Now we can put our pump back where we're not sure we want it, but it's going to go like so. Then I've got some 1/4-20 bolts here with lock nuts. Hopefully you guys can see those. I can't tell where the camera's pointing. We'll bring the bolts up from the bottom so they're not sticking out in. No, I'm probably not. Just going to run them down through the top. Put the nuts in the wheel well. They're not going to hit nothing. They're up above the suspension. So I think since I got plenty long bolts and everything, before I tighten that down, I'm going to go find a piece of rubber or something to put in between the pump and the inner fender, because it's already going to do the when it's running. So if you mount it straight to the inner fender like that, not only is it going to do the tick, 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 it's going to do the and I'm trying to make this truck nice. So if I can find a piece of rubber or something to put in between there that'll isolate some of that noise, make it a little nicer. So let me see what I can find. Okay, well, I didn't have any like pieces of rubber, so to say, that I could make, you know, a template of the bottom of that pump mount and punch the holes in it, put it underneath it. But I did find some just double-sided sticky weather stripping. So I'm going to cut 2 or 3 pieces of this about the same width as the pump. And then because I got those long bolts in there, we can even though I already got the nuts on the other side, we can just go ahead and pick that pump up, stuff these underneath there, tighten the bolts down, and then we'll have an absorber, so to speak, in between the pump and that inner fender. And it should cut down on the noise a little bit. So alright, I think that's going to work. I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down and we'll start running our fuel system. Alrighty. We got a piece of 5/16 fuel line here. I just stuck a filter on it. As you can see, probably maybe, it says 2 carb. Means that the flow direction faces towards the carb. I'm going to go ahead and put a hose clamp on here, and I know where I want this filter to go roughly, and that's why I put the filter on here first. A lot of times I'm going to put an inline filter and I'll run my hose from point A to point B and then cut a section out of the line, stick the filter in. And I could have done that this time too, but I know where I want the filter to be, so it's gonna sit. Filter's gonna sit right in here. So our line is going to go right about here. I should have brought my hose cutter out here. going to do with this razor blade is slice a big chunk of my finger out. But that's okay. It'll grow back, right? Alright, no chunks of finger missing. Need a hose clamp here somewhere. All right. I'm gonna go get my hose cutter, and then we can get this all lined out where we want it to be. Cut. This may be a 3/8 filter that I'm trying to force a 5/16 line on, but that'll just cut down the chances that it's going to leak. At least that's how I see it. Run that like that. I will put some zip ties on that later, but for now it's just fine. We already got our hose down here on, kinda-ish. Gonna cut it off. Alright, that's going to go on there. I got to go find one more hose clamp, and then we'll be ready to start wiring all this stuff in. Okay, well, dang squirrels got me again. I was all ready to start wiring this in, and then we got off on something else that I'll tell you about later when it comes to be that time. But now we're going to get back on wiring, so we'll get our relays mounted here, and we'll start getting stuff going. Okay, so our relay that we have here is a fuel pump relay off of an OBS truck. Now, that's what it is. That's what I disconnected it from. That's what I took it out of. But this is a multifunction GM relay. It's just, that's what it is. They used them for the headlights that go up and down on the Firebirds. They used them for fuel pumps. They used them for all kinds of different stuff. But that's what it is. So anyways, we got our wires here. It took me a little bit to figure out what goes where. I kind of already knew, but I kind of also had to do some figuring, because on the OBS throttle body vehicles and stuff like that, the relay wires leave the relay, go through, or the ground, I believe it is, goes through the oil pressure switch or oil pressure sensor. And if the oil pressure switch does not have oil pressure and doesn't complete a ground, then your fuel pump does not work. Like when you turn the key on, it primes the fuel pump, and then the fuel pump shuts off, and then when you're cranking, it doesn't turn the fuel pump back on until it shows oil pressure. Well, we ain't doing all that crap. We're using the relay so that we're sending power for the fuel pump through a relay instead of just hooking it up straight to the key, because this is the right way to do it, in my opinion. If you don't think it's the right way to do it, that's your opinion. So we got this. I got it figured out. I'll show you guys in a minute. And then this relay that I put in right here next to it is going to be for our electric fan that you can kind of see the corner of over here. So I had to go through and sort this out too, because luckily I know how to wire in an electric fan, and the instructions that came with, I bought a kit. Like, I ordered a fan with a controller, and the instructions that came with it weren't for the fan and controller that I got, because they didn't have nothing to do with it. Didn't make no dang sense. So I had to get that all sorted out. Now, that being said, I put it clear over here again. So anyways, I keep a notepad, and usually when I wire in electric fans and stuff like that, I'll write down or make a little diagram. Usually if I wire anything in a vehicle, I kind of make a little diagram or write down notes on it. So if it ever comes back, or if it's mine and I ever have an issue with it or whatever, I can go back and look at my notes and figure out what it is, because I always try to wire everything the same as a square body truck. Like, I've basically got wire colors and what wires go where and what wires do what on a square body truck pretty much memorized. Like, I can wire them without doing a whole lot of looking. So I try to wire everything that I wire that way with those color wires and stuff, because then if I'm ever doing any troubleshooting, I know what they are. Not saying you should do that, it's just what I'm familiar with. So, and square body trucks, not going to say never came with an electric fan. You get up into the like 87, 88, 89, 90, 91 Suburbans and stuff. They did have like an electric fan on the front of the radiator to assist with cooling for the air conditioning, but they never had like an electric fan like this wired in for the engine cooling. So it's a little bit different, but I got it all sorted out. So we're going to go through here and show you guys my notes. You probably can't read my handwriting, or you won't be able to make any of it out, but that's what I got. Drew myself little pictures for the fan, and I know which wire goes where on the fuel pump. So we're going to get some butt connectors, get some extra wire, whatever we need. We're going to get these fans and fuel pumps and all this stuff wired in so we can turn on the key and see if they work. Okay, I want to try to run this wiring as neat as I can, but I also don't want to have to have any extra like connections or wires or any of that stuff that I don't need. So the fan relay has a short piece of wire coming off of the relay, and then it has a ring terminal so you can ground it, and then it already has wire coming off of the other side so that you can run it down to the fan. So rather than having to hook wires back up to the battery or anything else like that, I'm going to grab my ground for my relay for my fuel pump. I'm going to run it over and bring it up right here with my ground for my fan relay, and I'm going to put an eyelet on it, and we're going to run them both right here together on the same screw. So that will be clean and work out good. And then you get what I'm saying. My brain doesn't work like 89% of the time, so sometimes I start talking about something, but I'm in the middle of doing something, and then I was actually kidding that time, but I just like stop doing what I'm talking about or talking about what I'm doing because I lose my mind. Like, I know dang good and well I brought a self-tapper over here with all that stuff that I had in my hands to put these ground wires on, and I grabbed the drill and all that stuff, and now I can't find the self-tapper that I brought over. So yeah, guess we'll go grab another one. And then what normally happens is I'll walk back over here and I got a new self-tapper. As soon as we take this and ground it here, I'll find the other self-tapper. It'll just like jump up and punch me in the face like, haha, I was right here the whole time. Yeah, that's how it usually goes. So there we go. Now we have our grounds. It's gonna bug me until I find that self-tapper, but it's not your guys' problem. You want to see what I'm doing here. So all right, we got our grounds hooked up for our relays, and we have our ground for our fan. So unfortunately our wire for our fan ground, unless we like run it straight across the dang radiator, isn't going to be long enough. But that's okay, I got more wire I can add to it. So anyways, maybe we'll come across the top and go down. Yeah, sounds good. That'll reach. Good enough. Okay, now on the relay for the electric fans, red wire, 12 volt battery, constant power, has an inline fuse in it. Our our fuel pump relay, our 12 volt battery constant, is this orange wire. It does not have an inline fuse in it. That's because it went to a computer and the computer was fused and yada, you get the picture. So anyways, I just so happen to have one right here. So we're gonna trim this wire back a little bit. I'm trying to make all this stuff the same length so it looks good, but probably won't. Anyways, and trim our orange wire back. We're going to take this doohickey right here, strip both ends of this. We need to go get a butt connector, and that's it. And we'll put a butt connector on one end. You guys might be getting confused because I'm wiring in both things at the same time. Don't worry about it at all. I'm confusing myself too. I did say orange, right? Orange 12-volt battery. All right. For anybody that said, yeah, that's right, appreciate you looking out. Okay. Now we're fused. That's good. You never really want to wire straight to a relay because relays are made to carry heavy loads of current without fault. That's why you use relays. So if there's a problem in the system, they're going to do everything in their power to just keep carrying that current, which is not going to be good. It's just going to start a fire. So that's why you need a fuse, so that, alright, this is probably going to be like duh for a lot of you guys, but not everybody knows how to do any of this stuff. So for the people that don't know, the purpose of a fuse is if there's a short or something in one of your wires in your wiring system, the fuse is designed to pop or blow what cuts off power through that circuit. That way it doesn't continue to be powered and start a fire or whatever. So ought to drop something. I guess it didn't. Alright, so now we have this green and white wire here, which is our 12-volt ignition for our fuel pump relay, and we have this white wire here on our fan relay that is our 12-volt ignition. Now, the ignition system is on a circuit breaker, or it has its own resettable fuse or whatever. So I don't have to run a fuse in line with these because they will already be fused wherever I hook them up, which I'm going to go straight to the fuse box, and they usually have some extra ignition ports in there. I'm going to go straight to the fuse box, find one of those, hook it up, bada bing, bada boom. We got what we need. You know what I mean. So anyways, because these are going to be okay and don't need, all they're doing is turning the relay on. They're just telling it, yes, close, so power can go through you. So it's not like a huge current load or anything like that. So rather than running two wires in, and this may not be right, and I'm sure if it's not, you guys are going to tell me all about it, but because it's small current and all it's doing is carrying enough load to turn on a relay, I'm going to wire these two wires together and only run one wire all the way around the truck and into an ignition source. Hopefully whoever just had a heart attack will be okay. Not that big a deal. So alright. We're doing it. We're doing it. We're hooking 2 wires together to run through 1 wire to the same place. Twisted them together. Oh, the connectivity. I can feel it already. Okay. I have a green wire here because I kind of like to keep stuff color coded, and one of the wires was green. So green wire that I mixed up with the black wire so that I can make a big knot so that you guys can watch me sit here and try to unravel it all. Probably do a time lapse on this so you guys can laugh at me in high speed. Okay, green wire, ignition source for both relays. Remember? Hope so, haven't been that long. Strip that. Put it in there. Crimp it like it owes you money. Good and tight. Alright. Now, for anybody that's curious or just nosy, whatever, you may wonder why I got this long black wire that I had all mixed up in the green one. Well, because I'm going to use it, that's why. So for our fan, yes, for our fan, we need I did this all wrong. I did this all wrong. Our black ground wire on our fan needs to be connected to this because it needs to go over to the temperature switch, because when the temperature reaches, I think it said it's 185 degree switch, when the temperature reaches 185 degrees, that switch closes, which creates a ground, which will then make the ground for the relay, which will then turn our fan on. So I have to cut all this loose. Not all of it. All I really got to do is take the wire from the relay and cut it off and hook it up to this black wire, because the other black wire that's going down to the fan needs to be grounded anyway, so that was okay. So crisis averted, quick and easy. Black wire. There's in here. Crimp daddy. Yeah. This one doesn't really need to be heat shrunk, but because it's a ground, and I mean, it really doesn't matter. But we put a heat shrink butt connector on it, so we might as well be proper with it. You know, walking outside in the cold. Okay, a little shrinkage there. I'm gonna leave those kind of dangling apart for a minute so they can cool off, because they will melt through wires. Now, we have our fuel pump down here. And before I go looking for what I need, I'm just going to shut you guys off because I don't want to make you sit there and wait forever. I'm just going to ground it straight to the frame here. And then we got our brown and white wire here that we will route down kind of sort of fairly cleanly and run it over, hook it onto the red wire on the fuel pump. And then as soon as we get this green wire hooked up in the fuse box, then our fuel pump should be bueno. But we won't know until we turn the key on. So now I need to ground that, but it's cooled off yet? Heck no, it's like 100 degrees out here. So you guys that do this a lot like I do, you buy these electric fans. Every single one that I have ever bought comes with a female connector on it. I've bought all different kinds of controllers. I've bought all different kinds of fans. I've bought it all. I've used it all. I have never gotten a fan or a controller that came with the male plug that fits into these female. Every single time I've ever done it, I do that right there. Cut the plug off, throw it in the trash, and now we're working with bare wires. Every time. I always have. So, whatever. That's my rant of the day. Probably like my third or fourth one, but still, you get the picture. So. Get it done. I'm not really that messy. I'm not just chunking that stuff on the ground and leaving it. After you guys get to quit for the day, I gotta stay and clean it all up. So, no big deal. I suppose I could not throw it on the ground and then I wouldn't have to clean it up, but where would the fun in that be? Alright. Now here's the fun part. Before I hook this up, I gotta see which way I want to hook it up, because I got a blue wire and I got a black wire. But if I hook blue, which is my power, to blue on the fan, and black, which is my ground, to black on the fan, it's gonna make the fan turn one way. I already made sure the blade was facing the right way to make sure that it was gonna be a pull fan, and it is. But I hooked blue up to blue, black up to black. It could be trying to be a push fan, and then it'll be spinning backwards and it won't be doing anything. Because these fans, you can turn the blades around and you can switch the wires. So if you hook, power to the black wire, which is supposed to be the ground, and ground to the blue wire, which is supposed to be the power, I know it's confusing, then the fan will turn the opposite direction. You hook it up blue to blue, black to black, then it'll turn the other direction from the opposite direction. So I need to go get my power probe and hook up power and see which way the fan is turning before I wire it in, so I know that I wire it the right way. So give me a minute. Okay, well, got my power probe. Greatest electric tool ever invented. And that's me saying that. Nobody even told me I had to. I love these things, but anyways, Gonna hook up our ground. Not quite sure how I'm gonna do this because I need both hands to do this, and I need to make sure. I guess I'm leaning up against the grill, so if the fan's pushing, it's probably gonna be blowing on me. Anybody catch what I just did? I didn't till the last minute after nothing worked. Yeah. I just tried to send power back to the relay and the ground. Didn't hurt anything, but it didn't like do what we needed it to either, so. Okay, colors are right, black to black, blue to blue. And that felt good. I wish I could have stuck my face down there. Alright, so now we know. Kind of knew before, but I had to make sure. Because I'd have been mad if I hooked it all up and it was wrong. Black to black. Blue to blue. Little shrinkage going on over here. Don't know what just caught me off guard. You might have seen me like a truck and trailer with a tractor on it that went by and caught me off guard. It sounded like something was coming across my gravel like straight at me. Made me take a look real quick. Okay, I only got one more connection left to make over here, and that's gonna be my brown and white wire down there to my fuel pump. I'm going to go ahead and hook that up. I'm going to go ahead and run these wires across the radiator, probably join them in with the headlight harness over there, bring them over to the firewall, find a find a hole there somewhere, stick them through. Well, one of them, the other one's got to go up to that switch, but either way, I got 3 more wires to hook up. I'm going to get all 3 of those wires hooked up, then I'll bring you guys back and show you the mess that I made, and we'll try everything and see if it works. Alright, I got those, where'd I put my power probe? I got those last couple wires that I needed to route and hook up, routed and hooked up, and I can't find my dang power probe. I figured out how to test the fans, where the only thing we won't know for sure. I'm telling you what, guys, I'm really losing it. Like, I don't know what I did with my power probe. Anyways, I came up with a way to test, there it is, right there. Came up with a way to test the fans, and the only thing we won't know is if the thermal switch is bad. So to do that, I just hook my power probe up to the battery here. And before we get too carried away, I haven't tried any of this stuff yet, but there is our relays wired to our battery, grounded. We got our wire going down to our fuel pump. I haven't loomed that or tied it up anywhere yet because I want to make sure it works. Now all the wires going over to our fans, all the way around. We got our wire coming over, going to our thermal switch. And then we have our 12-volt ignition. I just found an empty ignition spot on the fuse box and I plugged it in there. So right after I go get the key, we're gonna turn the key on. When I turn the key on, we should hear a fuel pump pumping. Now, I did put some gas in the new tank, but it was only like 2 gallons. So there's a good chance that I'm gonna have to put a little more gas in there and help this fuel pump start pulling fuel, because they're not really that great at getting going, but once they get going, they're fine. So got the key in, turn it on. Fuel pump is not running. Wasn't plugged in all the way, but that shouldn't matter. Let's see. Here's this primer thing here. Maybe this relay's no good. I don't know. I don't hear it running there either. Okay, air 10. It's not working even if I shoot direct power to it. So, bad ground. No, it's not it either. Well, maybe we got a bad fuel pump. Yeah, it's a bad fuel pump. We got 12 volts going to it, but it ain't doing nothing. Ground is good. We got ground. We got 12 volts. We just okay, well, we know it's wired in right because it's got power and everything else, so that's working. I just got to get a new fuel pump. Now, look down here. I don't know why I have 12 volts going to this. I shouldn't. That should be at ground. But if I ground this, our fans come on, which is what we wanted to do. So when this is grounded on the outside, it's just got 12 volt power, which I don't understand. I'm gonna have to check into that. I don't think it should have 12 volt power. Anyways, sends power, ground it, fans come on. So now, if I turn the key back off, and come out here, I want to make sure this doesn't have 12 volts. It does not, it's just the ground. And then I'll come over here and check our fuel pump, and it has nothing. So I guess we're gonna have to order a new fuel pump. It ticks me off. I bought that thing brand new. I used it one time, literally one time, and now it doesn't work. So I guess we'll have to get another one. But either way, the stuff is wired in right, so when we're ready, everything should work. Ta-da! anyways, as I was working on the electrical stuff today, and I didn't want to jump off course and show you guys, but I noticed our serpentine belt was like two grooves off on our pulley. So I got to looking around, and the pulleys weren't perfectly lined up, so I perfectly lined them up, put it back on, hit the key, jumped off again, put it back on, had somebody else hit the key while I watched it, jumped off again, did it again, and our tensioner blew up. This pulley's kind of wore out, tensioner blew up, so I've got a new tensioner, a new pulley, and a new belt coming for that. Our steering box, you may be able to see, you may not, has snap rings coming out of it and the whole end's blowing out. I have another one of those. We're just gonna have to change it. Front brakes are all done. We have everything to do the rear brakes. They have nothing. They have backing plates. Everything's got to be brand new. So we've got stuff to do rear brakes. I got to do a rear pinion seal. It's leaking. We got to do the steering box. We got to finish up the front of the motor. Got a couple things to do to the interior to make it more better. And we got to get this thing fired up again, tuned, right, all that. And there's probably even a little bit more. But we're running out of time for this video. I got to edit this thing today so I can put it up for you guys tomorrow. But Swamp Thing's coming along, and I have every intention of this truck running and driving in the next video. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. Then you'll know when you're gonna get to see this thing running and driving. If you haven't seen, if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen all the old videos on Swamp Thing and how Swamp Thing became Swamp Thing, or why it's called Swamp Thing, or whatever else, go back and check them out. There's a whole playlist for it. And, you know, all that good stuff. But we got a lot of work to do. We keep going every day. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.